week's episode of One Piece, Luffy has one final battle with Grount, the Marine rookie and former subordinate of Aokiji, who has a massive chip on his shoulder, a lot to prove, and a massive arm which looks like a giant werewolf gorilla. Today's episode of One Piece has a lot of tough acts to follow. We're currently in the middle of this vortex of awesome content. Today we had the premieres of My Hero Academia and Attack on Titan Season 2, both of which I reviewed and you should definitely check out at the links at the end of this video. Not only that, but we had the return of another great episode of Dragon Ball Super, and we were all hyped up to see the next episode of Samurai Jack. But instead, Adult Swim has completely trolled all of us, and instead they decided to completely show the premiere of Rick and Morty Season 3, Episode 1 over and over and over, all the way up to midnight. So when I got to One Piece this week, I was expecting something a little more exciting than just watching Luffy fight against a dude with a weird, freaky gorilla arm that never gets explained. This was a really simple end to a very simple filler arc of the series, and it's highly reminiscent of this one filler arc from Naruto Shippuden, which featured this character of Sora, who also had this weird arm that he kept bandaged up, and when it was unleashed, it was a weird, creepy monster. The good thing is in Naruto Shippuden, they actually explained where those abilities come from. In this week's episode, we have no idea why Grount has some sort of weird, freaky, giant, ridiculous monster arm. It does have some cool moments, like getting to see both him and Luffy have a duel, with Luffy using his Gear 3rd abilities and actually finishing him off with a freaking Thor-styled attack covered in hockey. But really, there's nothing in this episode that you haven't really seen before, and there really isn't that much that we learn about Grount. Just that he's from some sort of weird island that we've never been to before, he has a freaky arm that he can't seem to control when he's younger, he potentially killed everyone on the island due to his weird monsteritis, but he was saved by Aokiji, who covered his arm with this weird mechanical thing to sort of harness his power, and now that he's older and a little more experienced, he can control it, but it doesn't matter. Luffy still manages to absolutely whip this dude's ass. There are some cool moments in this episode, but like I said, it's basically just more of the stuff that you've seen from the rest of the series. Oh sure, there's a little bit of drama at the beginning of the episode with Prody, who's using a massive bazooka infused with hockey to try and take down the Straw Hats, but Luffy actually ends up taking this guy out just really quickly. Really, this episode was just all about the final battle between Grount and Luffy, and it was okay. You know, I think the problem with this little filler arc is they tried to introduce too many characters and they didn't really know what to do with any of them. The prospect of a character who has a freaky deaky monster arm is honestly kind of cool, but it seems like we've been seeing a lot of that in anime lately. Fusion Zamos, I'm talking at you. But it did lead to some cool imagery, like I said, with Luffy using his Gear 3rd and going up against him. It did look kind of cool, but otherwise I feel myself just being kind of underwhelmed by this episode. I will say though that if you're at least looking for some somewhat decent action anime this week, check out this week's episode if you're a One Piece fan. You'll definitely see something you like. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? That's really all I have to say about this one. A Marine with a lot to prove who has a monster arm going up against Luffy, and that's about it. You get to see pretty much every single technique that you've ever seen before, and at first they almost make it seem like this monster arm is going to give this guy some special abilities, like he's really fast, but Luffy just overpowers him pretty quickly. I mean, it was very predictable how this was all going to end. I will say, though, that I do like the fact that the One Piece filler stories tend not to go on for too long, and I will say that the two filler that we've had, like the last one we had that was tying into the movie, I think they were some of the weaker ones of the series, despite the fact that they do have some somewhat interesting characters in them. I think the one that we had right before we actually went to Dressrosa was a better example of how to do a filler arc in just 3 episodes and actually make it pretty intriguing. That being said, there's really nothing all that inoffensive here, and despite the fact that it seems like I'm being very negative about this episode, it's still very watchable, and it does have some decent moments and even some decent artwork and animation, so it is worth checking out at least, I think, once if you're a fan of One Piece and if you're just following the series religiously. So, just a really average episode of One Piece and an average end to an average arc. Although I do have to admit, it was kind of fun getting to see our characters hang out with Carrot a little bit more, getting to see Nami actually using her brand new climb attack, even seeing Chopper pull off some karate moves. That was pretty great. Brook, unfortunately, mostly just hang out in the background, and they almost made it seem like he's going to be killed in this episode, but of course he's fine. This is a filler arc. There's not really that much tension. So, that's my thoughts on this week's episode. I wish I had more to say, but that's really all I have to say. So 3 out of 5 from me. Make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's episode in the comments section below, and make sure to tell me what you hope to see from the next episode of One Piece, where the next arc will start in proper. That is right, the beginning of the Big Mom Whole Cake Island arc, and you'll definitely want to take a bite out of this one. Thank you guys again for watching this review. Again, make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's episode. Subscribe to the channel for all things One Piece related, as well as anime reviews. Like I said, I just reviewed the first episode of Season 2's of My Hero Academia and Attack on Titan, so make sure to check those out at the very end of this video and on our channel. And of course, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. I will see you guys next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.